Welcome to the CityCURRENT Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good in our communities. And we're honored to kick it off talking about Higginbotham. We have a lot of good news, a lot of important updates to dive into. We have Chris Rooker. He's the COO of Business Insurance for Higginbotham. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing great. Jeremy, love your energy. Thank you.
Hey, well, this is a fun conversation, diving into the world of insurance, especially business insurance, property and casualty, P&C. But when you talk about Higginbotham, give us a little bit of an overview for Higginbotham in terms of the footprint, areas of expertise. Dive in.
You bet. Sure thing. Well, we're a Fort Worth-based independent insurance agency with locations throughout the Midwest and the Southeast. 3 locations in and around Tennessee. Very happy to be in the great state of Tennessee. When you think about Higginbotham, the first thing that always comes to my mind, and I hope it come to our clients' mind, to our employees' mind, is that we are employee-owned, the majority employee-owned, and that's a big deal for us. You know, we win together, we lose together, we celebrate together, and we think we do pretty great things together. So that's one thing I would certainly say. We also, strategically, we're a little bit different, right? We break our world down into what we call day one and day two. Day one meaning we want to get the best rates for our clients, obviously, the best coverage and the best cash flow for our clients. And that's real important. It's important for us to get to know the client so we can go present them beautifully to the market space and get them really the best deal and the deal that they need. But we also break it down into that day two, which is really day 2 through 365 days in that policy year, right? And that's probably the more critical thing that we really do. I mean, there's a lot of people can negotiate the rates, terms, and conditions, but really I think we set ourselves apart with that day 2 through 365 because the better job we do there identifying risk and addressing risk is addressing really the long-term insurance cost. So that's a real big deal. We quite frankly spend a lot of money, in those divisions of our company. But when you're looking at loss control, you're looking at claims, you're looking at contract review, risk management technology, and that's just on the P&C side. With the equivalent on the employee benefit side, we get pretty excited when we start talking about what we can do for clients, after we've actually placed that coverage.
Well, and I think taking a holistic approach, and like you said, it becomes a real partnership where you can dive into all of these different areas and say, okay, now that we've looked here, let's look further down and let's look over here. And in the end, then the client is able to win. Dive in when you're talking about a prospect and sitting down with them at first. What are some of the questions you like to ask? What are some of the things that you're looking at right out of the gates?
Sure. I mean, we really want to get to know the client, right? And I mean, we want to know what their desires are, what worrying them. What might keep them up at night, and we can help them sleep better, right? I mean, the physical risk characteristics of a plant, of an operation, of a service that they're providing, that's obvious, right? We need to know those details. But the main thing we want to understand about that client is really what's worrying them, or where do they see as the great advantage that they can have by having a better risk approach. And the obvious outcome is better insurance rates, right? Maybe better deductibles or whatnot. But really, when we start talking about risk, we start talking about employee safety and safety of people using my products, it becomes a big deal. It becomes an emotional deal. And it's important for our clients, right, to feel safe using their product or using their facilities, et cetera. So, that was a lot, but we just like to dive pretty deep about some of those details outside of just the risk characteristics from a physical perspective.
What were some of the things, or what have been some of the things that the pandemic has brought to life? So when you look at some of those pain points that companies are dealing with, what are some of the things that the pandemic has brought to light or that you've seen as a result over the last 12 to 14 to 16 months?
Yeah, a lot of things on the negative side, of course, and some things on the positive side. But I think it's really exposed us all to the core of who we really are, and how committed are we to the business. Now, you look at a group of restaurants, though, how committed they are to the business. I mean, when they're shut down, by a government organization, there's not a lot they're going to do. But there have been areas, even just take hospitality as an example. You've seen people really shift their models and do things that are incredibly entrepreneurial. And I'll just give you the example of restaurants. You can't meet inside. Boom, you figured out a way to get outside, get on patios, put portable heaters up or portable air conditioners, depending on where you are, and stay open. We've had some clients really have wonderful years. It sounds crazy, but through COVID, just have wonderful years. And I think I can tell you for us and for many of our clients and, some of our competitors have done a really, really nice job of really being industrious and just finding new ways to think about it, new ways to approach risk. And look, there's been risk that none of us have dealt with this pandemic. And we've had to really think, and we've had to research, and we've had to engage the medical community, and we've had to ask a lot of advice. And we've done a lot of that. We've leaned heavy on our day two people, the engineering type mindsets, right? To really think through what can we do to keep businesses operating, if not at their peak. How about to be able to keep the doors right open until we can get back going? So I think to the core, we all know ourselves maybe a little bit better through this, and one of the questions, that we've seen, or we ask ourselves, are we operating out of fear? Or are we operating because we really want to serve that client and just do a great job? And I think we've personally been able to put fear aside and just go out and be entrepreneurial. We have not stuck our heads in the sands. We've seen many of our clients do the same thing, whether that be a restaurant, as I mentioned, or in the oil and gas segment, who they've been hit twice. They got hit with the downturn of the oil and gas group, and then they get hit with COVID on the backside of that. So we've seen some real entrepreneurial spirits arise and really come up in this time.
I'm thinking cybersecurity is one, but what are some of the more recent coverages that are new? What are some of the evolving trends? What are some of the things that really business owners need to be aware of?
Yeah, great question, because you've got some things that were way pre-COVID, like the auto experience, right? I don't need to go into that, but carriers suffered a bit there, people texting and driving and just doing a lot, things being more expensive, bumpers costing a lot more than they used to, have really driven things like auto rates. And then we have had some pretty good catastrophes on the property side. Some of those self-inflicted, some of them weather-inflicted, right? So enough about that. You mentioned cyber, and I'll just mention a few words about that. I mean, just recently we've seen incredible attacks from a ransomware perspective, also called cyber extortion in a lot of those policies, but some of that have been in the newspapers and been in the national press. Certainly involved in the pipeline. We've heard about some large insurance companies have been hit, and so and that is small businesses, that is mid-sized businesses, and that is large businesses, and that is a great concern for our clientele as it relates, particularly to cyber extortion right now, but all sorts of cyber issues. And we have seen that market turn. Prices are getting more expensive. Retentions are going higher in that space, and I would tell you that the questionnaires. What we're having to get from clients as it relates to getting good cyber quotes is just a lot more than it was a year ago for sure. And I would say a new one really, and it's been out there in front of us going, what is going to happen in the D&O space as it relates to some of the decisions that we are making as a business group to get people back into work as it relates to COVID, and so what's going to happen there. And I think that's still out there. We need to watch that, but I will say that the instances of D&O suits coming forward to the carriers is certainly rising right now. So we'll just have to keep our eye on that.
Talk about the power of being a broker. I think this is something that when you look at, and this will lead us to some of the things for the carriers, but talk about being a broker and all of a sudden now having a lot of tools that you can use to the advantage of your client. So what does it mean to be a broker?
Yeah, great question. Wow, that's even thought-provoking, and I've never been asked that question, Jeremy. So really, what it means to be a broker is being able to take every tool in your chest and use it to the good of that client. Right, that's the bottom line. And look, how have we developed what I refer to as our day two strategy? Loss control people. We didn't always have loss control people. We hired our first one, David Chaffin, in 1998. And from there, we have a number of them. Why? Because the client needed something that we couldn't provide. So we added it and we start to provide it. There's a reason we have many claims adjusters on our side. Brokers don't adjust claims, right? Well, I guess that's right, but they sure get engaged deeply in the claims process so many times. So it's just needed. And the same goes for our risk management technology. But that's, to me, what it means to be a broker, is continuing to think, what does the client need? What is the client asking for? And where can I fill a gap for that client to make them feel better about their risk of running their business? We really want businesses to go operate their business and worry less about the insurance and the risk management that they're having to provide for their employee safety, product safety, and the public safety, et cetera. So really, it makes it exciting. Work is different every day, and I'm glad to be with a firm that, we add services all the time. We just do. If a client needs something and it makes sense for us to provide it instead of somebody else providing it, then we want to add that service. That is a great environment to be in, Jeremy.
Absolutely. And for me as a client, on the personal side, especially for home and auto, but the winter weather got our home, and to have an independent group to be able to step in with Higginbotham, obviously, and make sure that the carrier gives us everything that we need to get our home back in order is a huge advantage. And so just having that independent party who is going to be your advocate to go to bat for you is a huge, huge advantage. And so I think the power of a broker really is an important piece to understand, because it gives you every tool, but it also gives you that real partnership to say, I'm your advocate, I'm going to go to bat for you as the client, and really make sure that you're taken care of. Carry that forward now with the carrier. Is what's something that when you look at the partnership with the carriers, all the different insurance carriers, what's something that you feel like they want the public to know, or the business owners to know? What's something that you feel like that they want to push out there in terms of just what's going on, hard or soft market? Where are they in the process? What's something that you think the carriers want everyone to know?
Yeah, there's a lot in that little simple question there, Jeremy. And let me address the first part of what you talked about, your commentary as well, just us providing that service when it really is needed most. We had the big winter freeze, which was unprecedented, and people call and go, oh my gosh, there's water flooding into my den. What do I do? Well, it is great to have people on retainer for you that you've pre-certified and pre-selected to come in and do water restoration and that sort of thing, right? So that, you mentioned that in passing, which is giant. It's a great thing for you to talk about. What would the carrier want us to know? Look, we have some great carriers that we represent. We truly do. And, they don't cover everything like we would like them to on behalf of our clients, okay? But what they really do is they try to do the right thing. And I think in some of these times, whether it be some hurricanes that we've experienced, we had this massive ice storm, we've had a lot of hailstorms, we've just had tornadoes, we've just had a lot of weather in not only our part of the country, but it seems like a little bit of everywhere. And I know sometimes they're overwhelmed, right? And that's where you do need a good broker to step in and get your file moved to the top of that stack and get good service, right? But the carriers are truly, the way I see it, we have good friends in the carrier side, that are working really hard to try to make the experience good. And I know that 9 point something times out of 10, we actually do have a good experience. But I tell you, the reason we're employed probably, right, is because of that 0.5%. That doesn't go well. We want to be able to step in there. But that's what they would want you to know. They do care. They want to cover your claims. They want to give you the best price they can give you.
Yeah, and I will second that on my end, is that I'm not going to name drop in terms of the company that we're with, but on both sides, Higginbotham has been outstanding. And then on the other side, our insurance carrier has been outstanding through this whole process. Very, very caring, has gone out of their way to make sure that our family is well taken care of. So I would definitely second that thought. When you look at the future of kind of where everything is headed, give us maybe a couple of recommendations for business owners to make sure that they're putting their business in the best position to get the best price, to get the best coverage. What are just a couple of general recommendations, general tips?
Sure. Well, first of all, find a great broker partner, and the reason I say that, you want to be able to communicate completely openly, right? I mean, there's no reason to hold a risk back from a trusted broker, because they need to be able to articulate that to the carrier in order to make sure you've got it covered correctly. So that's the first thing I would say, is find somebody you trust, be open with them, and discuss these things. I mean, there's sometimes you need to modify your business because the risk is just too much, but that's not what we're looking for you to do. You're running your business a certain way for certain reasons, and we respect that big time. And we want to be able to work around the way you operate your business to cover you the best way you can. And I would say, secondly, insurance shouldn't be primary. You really start with risk. Start with the risk and see where you can't mitigate the risk. Pass the risk as appropriate. Where you can't do it and it's unacceptable to you, we mentioned keeping you up at night. If it's going to do that, that's really where insurance really does kick in. And I would say that's the first thing I'd say, really. Don't lead with the insurance. Lead with the risk management. Follow with the insurance to fill those gaps.
What's been a pleasant surprise over the last year in terms of something within the industry or even with a client specifically that has put a smile on your face?
I hate to keep mentioning COVID because I'm so past that really right now, but I will say when we saw some of the insurance carriers stepping up and giving some premium reprieve, pushing off billing, and on their own, by the way, without being required to pass on some cancellations where people couldn't make the premium payments. That is just good. I mean, that's just being human and knowing that we're all in this together when we're operating our own businesses. The insurance carriers are operating their businesses and we're operating our agency, and our clients are operating their companies, and it's nice to have that partnership. And we have seen, I say, more partnership this year in those instances than we may have seen in the past, and I'm going to call that just good for humanity.
Talk about Higginbotham's support of the community. Philanthropy is a big piece of Higginbotham. Talk about what that means to support the community.
You bet. Well, that's where I'm truly proud moments on behalf really of our employees and all the work that they do. We feel big about giving your time, your talent, and your treasure, right? And on the time and talent part, our employees are involved in so many nonprofit organizations. And that goes from serving on boards to really going and doing just the work, right? And volunteering, serving the meals, building a house for Habitat, different things like that. And there's literally just hundreds of organizations that we support physically throughout our entire footprint. And we feel it's in our mission, we want to give back to the communities that serve us so super well, right? And so we absolutely do that. And then there's, of course, giving the treasure. And to that, we look to the Higginbotham Community Fund. And I mean, we get a lot of money for that Higginbotham Community Fund through payroll deduction, which is the majority of our employees given back through payroll deduction every year. And we donate that money to nonprofits. A lot of them are our clients, and some of them not, and we donate that money back to those nonprofits. And I tell you, with COVID, another, again, great thing as it relates to the human condition was just what we did on behalf of some of the restaurants we insure, which was basically buying meals from our clients' restaurants, a lot of meals, by the way, and serving those to healthcare workers, firefighters, police officers, et cetera. So that was just a really cool thing. It makes you feel good about what you're doing.
And it also shows the creativity and the ingenuity, to your point even before, of just, okay, how do we come together and creative problem solve? And okay, what if we buy these meals, support the restaurants, give them to the healthcare workers, the heroes, and be able to make it a win-win-win for everybody? So I love just the creativity around that too. Wrap up with just something that puts a smile on your face on the philanthropic side, where you've seen the team come together outside of what you just talked about with the restaurants. But what's a special event or a special effort or something that you think is really just a cool thing that lights up the employees, and you get to see the fire in their eyes in terms of a difference that they're able to make in the community?
You bet. Wow, that's a tough question, because there's a lot of things just that flow in my mind, and some of it is that tragedy that turns into just good, and that is where we had a large explosion at a place a place called West Texas, and the way our employees stood up and then made donations just to be delivered very quickly to organizations that were serving those families that were directly impacted was gigantic. And I tell you, where we do have big things that occur in this nation, particularly in our footprint, of course, but it doesn't have to be, just to see the way our employees step up. And I would tell you what we also do, and that is step up for each other. Everybody in their life, has a time where they get into a bad situation, or whether that's emotionally, financially, or otherwise. And I could literally tell you a dozen stories right now that are not even necessarily public, where employees have stepped up for other employees and raised funds or bought a car or done whatever to do that. And those kind of things that are not that rare around these walls of Higginbotham really are what really makes this place what it is.
Yeah, it's all about relationships. Wrap up with contact information. Where does everyone go to learn more about Higginbotham? So website, social media, where would you direct us to learn more?
Well, thanks for asking that, Jeremy. You can find us at www.higginbotham.com, and we're all over the social channels. So take a peek, see what we're up to.
Makes it easy. Well, Chris, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us, Jeremy. Appreciate that.